Hello, everyone. My name is Julie Seaton. I serve as the Secretary-Treasurer for the Ernest Thompson Seton Institute, a nonprofit dedicated to promoting the legacy of Mr. Seton. I also am the founder of a communication consulting business called Indelible Enterprises. I first became associated with ASLE in 1993. Later, I served as a graduate liaison collecting data on publications that would accept articles by ASLE members. I earned my doctorate in rhetoric and professional communication from New Mexico State University with a focus on environmental and scientific rhetoric. I left academia for a career in government contracting, where the analysis tool presented here helped craft narratives to bring disparate entities together to agree upon and act toward a common objective that, when achieved, resulted in a good end for a community, achieving praxis. What is praxis? It's triggering social change. What is a praxis process? Essentially, it's effective communication. It's getting others to think and act the way we want them to for community benefit. The praxis process model, introduced here, deconstructs symbolic actions viewed as narratives or stories to determine where they might miss the intended goal if analyzed before they're presented, or where they went wrong if the effort failed. Without delving deep into the definitions of praxis through the ages, I've used these three views as the pillars for developing praxis as a process: Aristotelian praxis, Marxist praxis, and Carolyn Miller's rhetorical view that uses the common English translation of the Greek word praxis, social action. All three describe a connection and an interdependency between the symbolic and the real, between theory and practice, between agents and their communities. Cherry-picking from historical views, I define praxis as an end unto itself and a symbolic act initiated by an agent that requires conscious, self-reflexive deliberation for the express benefit or good end for their community. The symbolic action is seen by members of the community who, as agents themselves, recognize and agree that the action is a means toward the stated good end and who take action toward it themselves. Key concepts include symbolic action, agents, deliberation, good end, community, and means to reach that good end. Let's walk through the praxis process I use for the model. A person consciously recognizes a need within a community and a good end to satisfy that need, becoming an agent who deliberates, weighing various potential symbolic actions or means he or she might personally take to reach the good end, and who chooses the best symbolic action and acts, exposing the action to others. Agents will recognize the action as potentially good for their community and will deliberate and evaluate the act's goodness, and then act in accordance with their own evaluation. The process repeats from the point of exposure, as all subsequent actions are triggered by the exposed action. Symbolic action is the interpretation of the world, both real and imaginary. Walter Fisher posits that all action is symbolic because all action is interpreted, and the mechanism for that interpretation is narrative or story. We all tell stories to relate our experiences, explain our world, and project our desires. We test the fidelity, feasibility, and coherence of stories we're exposed to against our own experiences, personal knowledge, history, and culture. You see here two examples of symbolic action. The top, using icons, a smiley face, a person on a bicycle, sad face, and an ambulance. The bottom symbolic action uses photographs, a multi-level building, firefighters fighting a fire, and a building ruin. Each symbolic action has a beginning, a middle, and an end, the basic narrative form. Each of us creates our own interpretation using embellishments based on our own personal experience, context, culture, and time. Because of its ubiquitous characteristics, I use a narrative approach to analyze symbolic actions for their capacity to prompt praxis. The praxis process model emphasizes a deliberate process that culminates in an agent and audience-recognized symbolic action taken to benefit their community. The model offers a clear path through the process that involves two entities, an originating agent and audience agents, who go through cognitive and physical actions to reach a self-realizable good end. The first three stages, recognition, deliberation, and performance, involve an originating agent, while stages 4 through 6, exposure, evaluation, and response, involve audience agents. The model uses a binary process identifying if praxis exists or not. If the answers to the questions posed in each of the 6 stages is yes, then praxis has been achieved on a one-to-one level. If the answer is no at any stage, then praxis is not likely to be achieved with the symbolic action being analyzed. Here is the symbolic action I will use to run through the model. Explore why and how the environmental humanities can become publicly engaged in successfully changing hearts and minds for more just and equitable futures. Many of you may recognize this statement because it is from this panel's call for presentations. The praxis process model begins with a person recognizing 3 things: framing the context, identifying an individual who can initiate the praxis process, and identifying a realizable and good end that will benefit the community. Recognizing context. There are 4 contextual views to consider: local, interior, global, and exterior. Local addresses the immediate situational context. Interior is a subjective view from within the narrative itself, set up by the narrator who controls what the audience sees. Global addresses the background context surrounding the immediate situation, and exterior is outside the narrative. It's an objective view that includes the narrator and audiences without regard to the narrative itself. Recognizing agents. Everyone starts out as individuals who benefit from the amenities of our communities without necessarily participating in the shaping of those communities. For example, children, non-voters, and non-citizens. Agents are active participants in social and political maintenance of a community. Voluntary choice, capacity to deliberate, and acting expressly for the benefit of a community are the keys to turning an individual into an agent. Recognizing community and a realizable good end. We belong to and share different communities simultaneously, and there are many more to which we do not belong. Praxis can only be achieved when agents share the community that is the target for the good end. The good end cannot be pie in the sky for others to achieve, but must be realizable with actions taken by the originating agent themselves. This thought process must consider how others might react. They might be confrontational, non-committal, agreeable, or enthusiastic, with different narratives associated with each type of reaction. Let's analyze the example. Questions posed in stage 1 include: does the originating agent recognize a context in which a community might benefit? Yes. Does the agent demonstrate a capacity to think beyond him or herself? Yes. Has the agent consciously and self-reflexively identified a realizable good end for a specific community? Yes. Is there a symbolic action? Yes. Deliberation has 5 sequential tasks: identify means, establish relevance of means to the end, determine feasibility, compare the various means, and make a selection. As an originating agent, brainstorming various means or ideas is important, and no idea should be rejected at this point. Relevance parameters include time, resources, and ethics. Determining feasibility occurs through self-reflexive filters such as physical capabilities, experience, and knowledge. Comparing each means against all others are weighed through lenses such as purpose, situation, style, format, and visibility. And finally, choose the best means based on all of those comparisons. Let's run the example through the 5 tasks in Stage 2. 1. Identify means. We see 2 here: explore how and why, and become publicly engaged. These provide the boundaries for identifying means to achieve the goal, successfully changing hearts and minds. Number 2, determine relevance. Is there a connection between the means and the good end? This is where contextual analyses come into play to understand the current situation in relation to the desired good end. Number 3, feasibility. Is it feasible that action will be taken by the environmental humanities community toward the good end? Number 4, comparing means against each other. We don't know what other choices the agent considered, but it is fairly clear, to me anyway, that there is evidence of self-reflexive deliberate thought that went into this statement. Number 5, selecting from the choices. This statement has been chosen over all others, and therefore we might deduce that it is a feasible means to prompt others to action in the agent's mind. To help us with the analysis, we can turn to narrative analysis tools such as Aristotle's artistic proofs and coherence, Burke's dramatistic pentad, and Fisher's logic of good reasons. In Stage 3, the symbolic action is the first open expression in the praxis process. The previous stages are cognitive and occur only in the agent's mind. The icons represent some performance possibilities: literature, presentations, art, dance, theater, sports, and film. Does a symbolic action exist? Of course. Yes, we see the words. There are no actual characters interacting with each other in this symbolic action, which makes the contextual analyses less complicated. I won't go into any of the details why just here. Stage 4, exposure. Exposure may happen simultaneously with Stage 3 when there is a live performance, but it stands by itself in asynchronous exposure. For example, when in a book or a recorded presentation is offered to an audience. Questions here include: are there others exposed to the symbolic action? In this case, yes. Are there agents present who recognize the symbolic act as potentially good for the community? Yes. The environmental humanities community is a broad audience that includes many ASLE conference attendees. However, the other community, those whose minds need to be changed, may not be exposed to this particular symbolic action now, but could be later. If the audience who has been exposed to it, us, engage along the same path as the originating agent, or if it appears in other contexts. Stage 5 involves audience agents and their cognitive processes to identify, deliberate, and evaluate the symbolic action. The evaluation questions posed here are in a sequential order. If the answers to any of these questions is no, then there is no need to continue asking the questions, specifically if we're looking for the existence of praxis. As analysts, we place ourselves in the audience agent role and may bin the data into 4 broad categories: non-recognition, opposition, acceptance, and adoption. Stage 6, response. Response is the only public expression of the audience agent's deliberations and evaluation. Praxis is achieved if the audience agents agree that the identified end and the symbolic action taken to get there are good for their shared community, and also they adopt the same or similar action. Praxis is not achieved if the audience agent takes no action or takes opposing action. If opposing action is taken, then it might be analyzed as an originating agent symbolic action with the possibility of promoting praxis all into itself. The actions we prompt in others by their agreement with our self-reflexive realizable good ends may ultimately result in social reforms that may last for generations to come. Here are some considerations to engage in praxis based on the statement that we have analyzed here. Explore why. Roderick Nash's Why Wilderness offers a light treatment of value considerations that give us reasons to be publicly engaged in changing hearts and minds to act toward the good end of having more just and equitable futures. Exploring the how. Become an agent. Be creative in identifying a variety of means to act for the good of a given community or communities. Gear the means towards 4 different types of audiences: non-committal, obstructionist, acceptors, and adopters. In summary, the Praxis Process model emphasizes a deliberate process that culminates in an agent and community-recognized symbolic action taken to benefit their community. The model offers a path through a process that involves recognition, deliberation, performance, exposure, evaluation, and response of a narrative. It examines cognitive and physical processes shaped by socially constructed knowledge. It demands agreement between agents within a community about means toward a good end for that community. The model may be used to analyze any narrative for its capacity to achieve praxis. Does the statement we have analyzed here have the capacity to prompt praxis? Yes. And this presentation and others in this conference stream demonstrate praxis as the process as I have defined it here. I look forward to your questions and our discussion. In the immortal words of Jimmy Buffett, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you.